Film. One of the things that I loved initially was the name because it gave me that FUBU for us, by us type of vibe.
Yeah.
Tell me about why you decided to name the film Nothing About Us Without Us.
The name itself comes out of disability rights, so that's where it actually came from. And I was speaking to my friend who talked about Nothing About Us Without Us, who is also Mara Lansai.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, actually, that'd be a really good name.
Yeah.
And in the film, she's actually talking about nothing about us without us.
Yeah.
And so it just made sense, it fit.
Yeah.
Especially seeing as what the film was about.
Yeah. Let's talk more about that. What was the film about? What is the film about? Break it down.
So basically, in this country, black women's services, black women's violence against women and girls services are being decimated. We've been in a crisis for quite a few years, and they talk about austerity measures, but the fact is our services have been at risk, at threat, facing closure, facing being swallowed up by larger white women-led services. And so it was important that for this organisation, UPNHUC, which the film is focused on, from Rotherham, they were coming down to give in a petition to 10 Downing Street. And so the film follows them on the march, along with all the other women who rocked up that day, their allies of women in the sector, as well as just women who were like, this is wrong. And although it was about UPNHUC that day, it was also about our sector, the black women's sector, who provide vital services for women and girls and children. And so it was really important that that was captured. Although at the time I didn't realise what I was doing. I just wanted to document it. But I didn't know how far the film was going to travel.
I think for me, one of the points that you mentioned about white women's services, what does that do in terms of relationships when you know that you're doing effective work and for whatever reason these organisations are getting this big pot of money? Is there ever a situation where people are like, no, here's a bit of money, and even if they are, do you take that money? Like, how does that work? Or does it even really work?
There's a couple of things there. So when I say white women's services, I mean services that are not led by black or minority ethnic women. And so usually, yes, they do get the bigger pot of money. Bottom line, it's racism. That's what we're talking about.
That's it,
So I can say about, the cuts and so on, but it's our services that are disproportionately affected. And that's not an accident. It's because our services are by and for black women. So what usually happens is we look for those allies that understand the specialist provision that we provide, and we look to them to fund us. In a way it works, because what that means is we're relying on trusts, private funders, as opposed to solely being funded by the government, because then it gives us a bit more freedom to critique government policies and what the government is actually doing. So it gives us that flexibility. In terms of white women's services, saying here's a pot of money, no, that doesn't happen. That does not happen, no.
BME Women's Services, I know the importance of specialised services, but there's a lot of people that don't understand why, one, we would have women's services, but then more so BME Women's Services. Could you just break down the importance of the work you do and why we need these services?
Inequality means that we experience a range of different oppressions. And so we as BME women, we have the gender inequality, and then we have inequality around race and ethnicity. And then you layer that up with class, age, and so on, disability, and so on. When it comes to violence against women and girls, it's really important that if I attend a service, that as a black woman, my needs are met, but not solely around language, because the policies of the 1970s was all around, well, we need language. So it's important, and that is important, but it's equally important that a service understands my experience of violence and the context of my experience of violence. The context is always going to be that as a woman, I'm racialised because I'm a black woman, and also being in this country and being a child of empire, what that means in terms of racism. So my help seeking if I'm experiencing violence, and I go to institutions that may view me in a particular way, and then I get a particular response because I'm a black woman. It's important that a service understands that. It's important that a service understands the needs that I would have as a woman experiencing violence. Historically, what help seeking would have meant going to the police or going to homeless services. Having a dedicated specialist BME service provides that holistic wraparound. And I know we use the word holistic a lot, but it's important because the services that are part of the BME sector in this country provide that wraparound. We hear the word and the phrase intersectionality a lot, but the services that operate in the UK for black women and minority ethnic women provide that on a daily basis because they're looking at all the different strands of our identities and then they're responding to that in how we experience violence.
110%. I think even for me recently, I was talking to somebody about like the whole Windrush situation, and in terms of even like sexual violence. So for example, we was watching the news and they were speaking about how people have gone underground because they're not documenting, they don't have the right documents. And I posed a question to them, okay, so what about if one of these women are sexually assaulted and or a victim of sexual violence? What does that mean for them in terms of knowing who to go to, where to go to, because clearly they can't go to police. So for me, when you talk about specialised BME services and people really understanding the needs of black women, I'm like, even if you look at that standard, you can see that there's a gap of where those women will go to. So I think you hit the nail on the head. But it just frustrates me sometimes when people are like, I don't get it. Obviously, it's not for me to break myself for you to understand, but as long as the services are there for my people, that's my main thing. In terms of like sustainability, because like we spoke about the money not necessarily being shared out equally, how do you sustain things? How do things, keep going? Because I know it must be difficult in terms of finances, because unfortunately we need money for everything. But how do you keep going? How does things just keep moving?
In terms of the BME women's sector, the services in this country, I think it's tricky because on the one hand, it's about that holistic service I talked about, but then on the other hand, it's still a numbers game. Those services are still bound by making sure that they see X amount of women and that they report back that the woman has experienced this and experienced that, and now she's no longer at risk, and it's all around risk and high risk, low risk, etc. That can sometimes, I think, make it quite difficult when it comes to monitoring for services. I think they are survivors. They've been in the sector for so long. They know how to provide that holistic service and still make sure that they are meeting funding requirements. A lot of the times, they'll rely on local money, local commissioning tools, like local frameworks that local authorities will provide for those services. They'll also look to government as well. But I think it's quite tricky because a lot of services across the country have closed because they can't sustain. They can't meet the demand. So locally you have a range of women experiencing violence rocking up to the door wanting services, but that service will only have X amount of money to provide a service. And so what do? We've had services where directors of that service have taken a pay cut and worked less hours in order to ensure that they provide a frontline service to women in the local area.
The word resistance. I love the word. I think the word resistance in itself is just so powerful. It makes me so happy because when I started to read about black women's resistance in particular, it's made me realise that I'm not too high or I'm not too aggy. That I can be this kind of bossy girl that says move out my way and I can take up space and stuff like that.
That's right.
And even for me, when I think about the film that you created, the fact that you're marching in the film is one part of resistance, but I think the fact that you made the film is another level of resistance in terms of documenting and archiving this piece of work. Because as we know, a lot of our books and our stuff have been burnt, whether it's bookshops being burnt or things not being documented, or our voices even now just not being heard. So for me, it made me so happy that when I watched the show, I was like, yes, Wanda, I see you. Because I know you do some filmmaking, so I know at like Million Women Rise, you did a bit of filming and stuff. But to see you create this film, for me, which is very important in terms of just having the archive there, knowing this happened on this day, and it's here. You know what I mean? And no one can take that away from us.
Absolutely.
And that makes me really happy. Million Women Rise. Can we just quickly speak about that and the beauty of it? This year, March the 10th, I think it was sometime in March. Let me try quickly. It's always such a good experience, and I've been to other marches. I went to the Women's March, and that was an experience, not the best one. And I quote you, and this is not even a lie. When I was at the march, there was a Muslim woman with luggage, and another woman said, like, they're not going to check that back. And at that point, that's when I was like, I'm only going to Million Women Rise. Like, I can't be in a space where we meant to be there collectively together, but then you're still putting this Muslim woman down. And it was a very bad taste joke. I wasn't impressed. And at that point, I actually went home.
Right.
I went home because you know what, I think, starting up in this movement, you want to almost be a part of everything. So with me, I want to be a part of everything. But you soon realise that it's not every women's movement you want to be a part of what's actually for you. Yeah. So when I look at Million Women Rise, it makes me really happy because it's for us, by us. You see familiar faces. I see you at the front, see Ragged at the front, and that makes me so happy. Just talk to me briefly about Million Women Rise and how it started.
Oh, wow.
And you can.
I agree with you. Yeah. I think it's very important where we place our bodies.
Yeah.
It can't be everywhere we put our bodies, because also we're taking all these ruptures and breaches every day. So it's important that when we put ourselves in a space, that we make sure that either we're going to make a difference in how we move our bodies in that space, but also that we're going to get somehow fulfilled by doing that as well. Yeah. And I think resistance is part of that. Million Women Rise as a movement, which started a very long time ago. I was at one of the first meetings with Sabrina when she was first thinking about it. And it came out of, I think, a tiredness of constantly supporting women, constantly helping women to survive and thrive, but actually what's happening around those who perpetrate violence against us. And I think it was important for her and the other founders of Million Women Rise to form this movement and to say every year we're going to put our bodies in a space and we're going to use our bodies, our voices, our souls to literally rail up against all this violence against us. And we're going to make a noise, we're going to take up space, and we're going to let everybody know that we are here, and we're here every year until violence against women and girls stops. Yeah. And I think that's, whenever I'm in the space of Million Women Rise, that's what I feel. I feel a collective energy of we're all together, we're all literally staking our claim on our space, on our right to exist, to resist this violence against our bodies and our spirits. And so today we're going to march, we're going to make noise, and we're going to make sure from the oldest woman to the youngest child knows why we're here, and they can all participate, and they do. Yeah. And I think it's important because whenever I'm in that space, like you said, regardless of how you start the day, how you feel, the collective energy, the vibration, the power of women, you see it. Yeah. You see it in movement. You see it in vibration when that march happens.
110%. I remember the first march I went to, and I compared Million Women Rise March, and I compared it to this year. I think the first one I went to was maybe like 3 years ago, and it was great. But I think in just building up my confidence in terms of myself, this year I was there with my chest, with a placard, doing singing the song. I was gassed at the front, like I was doing the most. But you know when you don't care. Whereas a couple of years ago, I'm obsessed because I got to keep it cute. And now I don't care. I was just, because you're just in that space, you just feel the vibe, and you just feel the energy. Yeah. And it's such a beautiful feeling. It's such a beautiful thing, and I can't wait till we get to a point where more Black women are there, whether you're part of the movement or you don't think you're part of it. That's another thing. I think a lot of women don't think they're part of the movement. Some of my friends that don't work in the field, they're like, oh, and I'm like, no, this is for you. We're doing this for you. We're doing this for your daughter, so come along.
Absolutely.
So we wanted to say something.
Absolutely. I was going to say, what else I think is really precious about that space is that the voices of women that we don't usually hear have a platform. Definitely. So you have women from around the country, women from abroad, like this year we had Marie Claire, Skype in from the Congo, and it's really important that is a platform for voices of all women, including Indigenous and First Nation women, because it's important that all our struggles are linked together. Like Audre Lorde says, I am not free until you are free, even if our struggles are different. And I think that's really important because everything's linked. And if we're not joining the dots, then we're missing it.
That's it. That is it. Self-care.
Yes.
You said that your mantra is self-care.
Yes.
What advice, what can you give, what word would you give to Black women across the board in terms of self-care, really looking after themselves, whether it's work or whatever it is, but just really looking after themselves?
Do you know what, Kafayat? I've been on a bit of a journey with this. And that's because my training was very much Eurocentric. It was very much about what self-care looked like in terms of this Western idea. And when I started to think about actually what did our ancestors do? How did we tell our stories? How did we gather? How did we have spaces? What did we create to take care of self? And I've spoken to loads of different women, friends, sisters, who say actually part of my self-care is my resistance. Part of my self-care is marching the street and singing as loud and beating that drum. And I think it's important that we all find what works for us. It is my mantra. It is very important to take care of self, because if I don't take care of this body, then this body cannot stand on that line and do what I need to do for my children, my grandchildren, future generations.